Well, I'm Shane Schultz, and this is the Arisen Strength Motivational Podcast. Folks, we do this show because we feel there are far too many dreams, talents, and capabilities that are being suppressed for whatever reason. Whether it be injury, illness, or life experiences, these are all situations that have us be robbed of what it is that makes us special and unique in this world, and that's our passions. Here at Arisen Strength, we encourage people to pursue their passions in spite of the challenges they face. Now, how we do that is with our three-pillar concept. Number one, we support. Number two, we empower. And after all that work, number three, we have the right to celebrate. Folks, that's the Arisen Strength concept. Our goal is to help you be more than the challenges you face. I'm here with my good friend. Her name is Alisha Bridges of Being Me in My Own Skin. Hey, Alisha, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great, Shane. How you feeling?
I am doing really awesome. I got to tell you, I am so excited, folks, to have Alisha here with us tonight. I got to meet Alisha for the first time in person at Healthy Voices 2018, where we had the opportunity in order to meet one another, and I could tell right from the very beginning that this lady had something special. Not only is she like 10 foot tall and bulletproof, so she has the ability to really reach outside of what it is that she's ailed by. She has a talent in so many different ways that can show that she can be more than the challenges that she faces. And that certainly is what it is that we do here at Arisen Strength, is to talk about awareness topics through inspiration, through awareness and motivation. I can't think of anybody who fits that bill any more than Alisha Bridges. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
I appreciate you for having me. I feel like I need to cash app you, PayPal you some money or something for that intro. I appreciate it.
I definitely.
I'm feeling the love.
Right, there you go. Yeah, we like to give a lot of love, you know, and I will definitely send you my PayPal link. No, I'm only kidding. So here's the thing. I mentioned the fact that Alisha is much more than the challenges that she faces, and that she is more than the challenges and struggles that she goes through, which means that she has some of those things. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, Alisha, what is it that you deal with? What type of conditions that you deal with on a daily basis?
So I have psoriatic disease. Psoriasis is an autoimmune disease, and it's caused by an overreactive immune system. And what ends up happening is I develop really itchy, flaky, dry patches of inflamed, dry skin all over my body. And then I also experience joint pain. I first encountered psoriasis when I was just 7 years old, and I was about 90% covered at that time. So I've spent a lot of my life with psoriasis. It's like we're in a relationship, and I just cannot get rid of it. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
Well, I got to tell you, folks, we have some things in common. I mean, you talk about having psoriasis when you were in your single-digit years. I dealt with clinical depression in my single-digit years, and also suicidality. So in different conditions, but we kind of understand what it's like to have something from our single-digit years right on up till yesterday and today, right?
Totally agree. And honestly, I've dealt with a lot of mental health issues because of my psoriasis, a lot of which I did not even realize was related to my disease until recently, until far into adulthood. So we definitely can relate in a lot of ways.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me what psoriasis is. I mean, there's a lot of different things that sound like psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, and there's a lot of different things that have similar sounding type conditions. What is psoriasis to you?
So for one, psoriasis is non-contagious, but it's due to an overreactive immune system. Basically, the way it works is in a normal person, a person who doesn't have psoriasis, your skin cells will grow and die within 28 days. So new skin cells grow, they die off in 28 days. Well, my body is doing this process within 3 days because my body thinks something is wrong and it thinks it's in need of producing skin cells. So my body is doing a 28-day process in 3 days, and my body doesn't have enough time to shed off the dead skin, you know? So what ends up happening is I get really flaky, dry skin that just builds on top of good skin, and it's itchy, it's inflamed, it bleeds, and it's awful in the wintertime, and it's triggered by a variety of occurrences. So it's a tough disease to have because it's visible and other people can see it. So sometimes you risk being considered contagious or being stared at. It just comes with a lot of flack.
Yeah, also known as stigma. Okay, so you had mentioned about single-digit years. Was it as active in your single-digit years as it may be now, or was it a little bit different?
It was way more active in my single-digit years, and a part of that was because I was an adolescent, there weren't many treatment options that I could take advantage of. So now there are tons of different treatment options for people living with psoriasis, but back then, I could only use topical treatments or phototherapy or another treatment called occlusion, which is a really old school form of a psoriasis treatment. So I basically lived with being covered by 90% up until a couple of years ago. The only thing that wasn't really affected on a regular basis was my face, but everything else was consistently flared with psoriasis.
And you had mentioned that you had open sores. You mentioned that you had skin that was building over the top of your old skin, even though that it wasn't very old, and it was obviously irritated, agitated, inflamed, and so forth. Did you run the risk of infection as well?
Definitely. So I kind of feel like the reason why psoriasis itches so bad is because it's your body's way of saying, get rid of this dead skin. Like it needs to go. So I really think that that's like a natural response of your body. And so anytime you're scratching and you break skin, definitely run the risk of infection. Like if you have bacteria in your fingernails and then you're scratching your skin profusely and you break the skin, that's definitely a risk that you take.
Yeah, I can imagine. You mentioned the different therapies, but obviously there weren't many. Was it something that was covered by your insurance? I know that that's a lot of a problem when it comes to different conditions that are out there, whether it be medically or mentally, that insurance doesn't necessarily cover for the treatments that might be available. Was that an issue when it came to your situation?
So as a child, I really didn't have too many issues with what was covered because really the only options that were available to me were the more cheaper ones. That's saying that lightly because cheap in a lot of cases is like $600. But when you compare that to a biologic that can be over $10,000, then in that case it is cheaper. As I grew older, there were more treatment options that became available to me, but with that, they were more expensive. So in my experience, a lot of times what would happen is if you're considering a treatment, your doctor takes it to your insurance company, and the insurance company wants you to jump through all of these hoops in order for them to cover the treatment. And that's even if they agree to do it in the first place. And so what I'm talking about is called step therapy. They require you to do cheaper treatments, sometimes really harmful treatments that come with a lot of side effects in order for you to get the more expensive treatment. So I went through a lot of fighting with the insurance companies, my doctor fighting with the insurance company. Honestly, it just causes a lot of trouble because the doctor gets, I like to call it insurance fighting fatigue, where they have to do it for so many patients that now they don't feel like being bothered with it. Myself as a patient, I've gotten really frustrated with the process, even sometimes decided not to treat because the process was just so frustrating. So it's been an interesting journey with the insurance companies and finding an effective treatment.
Well, I got to tell you, from my experience, I also was a medical billing consultant for a number of years. So I know what the process is. I actually was in the middle of when managed care took over. And I know when these conditions really took a backseat policy and took a backseat to money management, and it took a backseat to politics. So when you were dealing with, like you're talking about a skin condition, with that being the case, did you also have issues as to where they didn't determine it to be medically necessary, or that it was a cosmetic situation, that it was something that was not necessary for you to have a fully functioning life?
Not with that. No, I've never had issues with them considering it being a cosmetic issue. Because most of the time I have like top dermatologists, or well, I wouldn't say most of the time, but I've been blessed with encountering some dermatologists that were very heavy into the research side. So they understood that the components of psoriasis is skin deep, and it really starts with your immune system, which is a really big deal, because if you have something faulty going on in your immune system, it can really affect your body in a negative way. It just so happened for me, it's the skin that's affected by my faulty immune system. So I will always say that the doctors did their best for the most part, trying to get me the treatments they felt would be most effective. But I've had also bad experiences where doctors really did not do their due diligence to getting the right treatment. And so with that, I kind of had to advocate for myself and fire my doctor. That's what I say, like a relationship with your doctor is important, and you have a voice. And if you feel like you're not being treated fairly or you're not progressing in a positive way, it's okay to let that doctor go. So I've experienced a lot of that.
Wow. Yeah. You just talked a lot about what it is, you know, as a life improvement coach, that's what it is that I'll tell somebody, is the fact that you're the one that is hiring the doctor, not the other way around.
Right.
They're not hiring you.
Exactly.
So because there is medical records, right? You don't want to have the reputation of being a hard to deal with patient, because bottom line is it doesn't help. So when you want to be, what you really want to do is that you want to be as proactive as possible, also engaged, right? You want to be as an engaged patient with your doctor. You want to ask them questions, because really what I've noticed is when it comes to managed care, you know, there's a certain number of people that they have to see in order to keep the lights on. So what you want to do is that you want to take them out of their cycle. Because, I mean, they're sitting there and it's like, okay, I have so many minutes in order to be able to talk to each patient, and I need to assess what's going on, and I need to be able to make a diagnosis as soon as possible, or I need to be able to work out a remedy for a symptom that they might be dealing with. There's a lot of symptomology going on these days and not necessarily getting to the core of the problem. With that being the case, you know, with managed care, you really need to be engaged into your treatment. You really need to be engaged into your recovery, and where you are asking questions, where you are paying attention to what the doctor is saying. And you're also doing your own due diligence, right? Your own due diligence for what it is that you've learned. And you can come to the doctor and say, hey, look, I read about this. And if they give you any flack, you know, it's like, don't take it personally. Just let them give it a little bit, and then just like kind of laugh and say, you know what, I appreciate who it is that you are, but I'm just trying to get better. Is that okay with you? And, you know, and let's work together. Let's see if we can get this taken care of, you know.
Right.
And they kind of let their hands down and they say, this person's a little bit different than the average cat, right? And you know, they start looking at things a little bit different. In most cases, they'll be helpful as much as possible, versus just running you out of the office and saying, you know, thank you for us being able to bill you for an office visit.
Exactly.
All right, here it is. You're 7 years old. You're in your single digit years. You're going through what it is that you're going through. When were you diagnosed with psoriasis?
So I was diagnosed at 7. I had got chickenpox, which was very common in my age group at that time, because a vaccine didn't come until about a year later. So at that age, you just kind of got chickenpox, and it was a thing that you went through, and that was it. So when I got chickenpox and the chickenpox went away, my grandmother noticed there were like new skin occurrences, and that the scars that you typically get from chickenpox when you scratch a lot were like crusting over. Mm-hmm. So she took me to the dermatologist, and they just surveyed my skin and determined I had psoriasis. And so that's kind of where the journey started. At that age, I wasn't really aware of how much psoriasis would have an effect on how I viewed myself, and how it would have an effect on how other people viewed me. And I definitely was not aware of beauty standards at that time. Sure. So I really did not understand what I was about to encounter. It was interesting. Like at that age, it really hadn't hit me. Like I couldn't even say psoriasis. I couldn't even spell it. And then it's like you go to the doctor and you leave there. And now as a 7-year-old, I have the responsibility of telling adults and my peers what it is that I'm dealing with. that's a very interesting dynamic, just looking back at that.
Yeah. So what type of discussion would you have with your classmates, at the time of what psoriasis really is? I mean, I imagine that there was a whole lot of maybe unintentional stigma going on and maybe some intentional stigma in order to be able to make themselves look a little bit bigger or better than you at the time while picking on you or while belittling you in regards to your condition. What type of discussion would you have at such an early age with your friends?
Well, that's interesting because the earliest I can remember of feeling uncomfortable, and this is when my mind started to become aware of beauty standards, was in the 5th grade, and I had to take a swim class and put on a swimsuit. And then I would wear dresses and skirts, and people would ask me, like, what's that on your skin? Like my classmates. And anytime I would say psoriasis, like they would look at me like a deer caught in headlights. Mm-hmm. And it would make me really uncomfortable because I didn't know how to fully explain my disease. They didn't really know how to understand it. So I started lying, and I would tell them that I had eczema, and I would notice the difference. Like when I said psoriasis, I would get this like dumbfounded look. When I said eczema, it'd be like, oh, okay, I heard of that before, and we could move on from the conversation. So when that stopped being good enough, because the questions would just be overwhelming, the staring would be overwhelming, I started to isolate in a way where I would cover up my disease with clothes. Yeah. So it didn't matter how hot it was outside. I was always wearing long sleeves, long pants, and I did everything I possibly could do to avoid having to explain my condition.
Wow. So folks, we are talking with Alisha Bridges of Being Me in My Own Skin. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about more than what psoriasis is. We're going to also hear about a lot of different things that she's got going on, because it's much more than what it is that she is faced with on a daily basis. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's me, Travis Spartan. If you want to learn more about living the dream with Travis Spartan, visit us at speakingtotheheart.org and at iTunes.
We are back here on the Arisen Strength Motivational Podcast. We're talking with Alisha Bridges of Being Me in My Own Skin. We have been talking about some of the challenges and struggles that Alisha has been dealing with since her single-digit years. But I can tell you this, I got to meet Alisha, like I mentioned. I got to meet her in person, and she is strikingly beautiful. So let's talk about the high school years. They must have been much better, right?
Actually, no.
No?
I feel like I did not grow into my looks until college. High school, I was very awkward. I've always kind of been like a free spirit and extroverted in a sense. But in high school, I was kind of awkward because I was dealing with psoriasis. Then I was dealing with being extremely tall, like taller than everybody.
I did say 10 foot tall. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Being super lanky, and it was just, I did not find myself, and I'm still finding myself, to be honest, but I did not really feel attractive until I hit college.
Okay.
So high school was extremely awkward for me.
Gotcha. Okay. So we talked about the single digit years. We talked about your pre-high school years. Now you're in high school. Let me ask you this. How about your teachers? How did they go along with the situation? I mean, were they helpful? Were they constructive with you? Or how did that all work?
Honestly, I don't ever remember my teachers being super helpful. I do remember the awkward moments when I had gym class and the rule was we had to change out in the open. I can't remember if I told my teacher or not, but I was like, I have to change in the stall by myself. Because I didn't want my classmates to see the extent of my disease. And from what I can remember, I think she let me change in the stall because I don't remember any kind of crazy situation. So again, I covered up completely. So it wasn't just me covering up from my classmates. It was also covering up from anybody. And so that also included teachers as well. So I don't even think I really gave them the opportunity to extend help if I needed it.
So you were kind of like in your protective mode.
Yes, definitely. I protected myself from letting people know that I had psoriasis at all costs, whether that was covering up, whether that was not participating in something, whether that was not going to something. I did everything I could to make sure people didn't know. And sometimes it still failed because it was so noticeable if my neck was broken out or my hands were broken out. So sometimes no matter how hard I tried to cover it up, psoriasis kind of, stepped into the room and talked for itself. So.
Man, I got to tell you, I used to get like a cyst. I used to get different type of cyst on like in my face or on my back. And there was one time as to where we were doing the school pictures and I had one on my nose. And man, I looked like Rudolph. I mean, I really did. I had that redness going on in my nose and everything. It was like, oh my God. And it was school picture day. And I know that I really felt awkward. I know that I felt like, man, this is going to be humiliating. I felt like this was really going to be something that I'm never going to have this day back, right? It's always, this day is going to be come and gone, and I'm going to have a cyst on my nose, and, they're probably going to do, and we had to pay extra in order to get the blemishes, right? So
right.
I know how that felt. So, man, I got to tell you, I really do feel for what it is that you've been through. One thing that I know a lot of people have brought to my attention, and I've had a lot of interviews. I've had over 650 different interviews in my career, mostly with, medical or mental health awareness topics or health and wellness topics. One thing that's coming out a little bit more is they're finding themselves to be stronger for what it is that they've gone through. Do you find that to be for your situation?
Yo, Shane, it's so funny that you say that because before I found an effective treatment, like right now, I'm virtually clear. Like I have a couple of flares on my legs, but my psoriasis is really being suppressed by the treatment that I'm on. Before I found an effective treatment, like my entire life was psoriasis. I just was so mentally bound by the effects of psoriasis that I really didn't have time to think about anything else that was affecting me in my life. It was almost like it was blocked out because I was just so consumed with what psoriasis was doing. So after the psoriasis went away, you would think that the depression would go away, that all this self-love would just come into flow, that my self-esteem would increase. And no, it actually almost had the opposite effect because it was kind of like, all right, well, now I no longer have the psoriasis to worry about. Let's bring up these childhood issues that I've never dealt with before because the psoriasis was always in the way.
Yep.
So now I have really been doing so much work with my mental health and emotional health and a lot of stuff that I have failed to address that happened to me growing up and even into adulthood. And the psoriasis comes into play because of all the suffering that I'm dealing with right now because of past stuff. The psoriasis actually gives me hope because I look at the times where I just thought I was going to die because of this disease. If it wasn't it killing me, it was me wanting to kill myself, me not wanting to be here on earth anymore, asking why me? Why do I have to be the one going through this? And now, and a lot of people don't like putting it like this, but psoriasis, for me personally, I can't speak for other people, but it has been one of the biggest blessings. It has been linked to my life purpose. It has been linked to my life passion. It has literally pushed me into places, into spaces, into people that I would have never, ever met if it was not for what I went through with this disease. It has given me a story to tell. It has given me the ability to inspire and to give hope to someone else. So with that being said, when I go through hardships now and it feels like I'm never going to get through it and it's so hard, I look back. I got through something that I thought was literally going to kill me. And now it's the biggest blessing that I can say has happened to me to date. So I look at that and I really use it as encouragement for myself when I feel like I'm stuck in a place that I'm not going to get out of. So it definitely has helped me in a huge way.
Man, I got to tell you, I've always said that we are more like each other than what we are different. What you just said, I can totally relate with because I've dealt with, like I said, I've dealt with clinical depression. I've dealt with PTSD. I've dealt with borderline personality disorder. I've dealt with codependency. I went through addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on and on. But here's the thing. When people ask me in interviews, when I'm the actual person that's being interviewed, they ask me, what would you change if you had the chance? I mean, what one thing would you change if you had the chance? And I have to ask them, and I kind of smile when I do it, and I'm like, let me ask you this. Can you tell me, will I be where it is that I am right now? Right now, will I be where it is where I am? And they're like, well, we can't guarantee that. In fact, the likelihood is probably not. There's probably going to be something, if you took it away, it probably is going to make a difference. And I said, then I wouldn't change a thing. And I had a lot of different things happen in my life that people would kind of look at me with three different heads. They would sit there and say, what do you mean you wouldn't change this? Why wouldn't you change that? Of course you would change this. You would change that. And the answer is no, I wouldn't. Because I found, just like you did, I found my purpose in life. My purpose is to help others be more than the challenges that they face, to empower them to be more than what it is that they are struggled and challenged by. And with that being the case, if I didn't go through what it is that I went through, I wouldn't have that strength. I wouldn't have that experience. I wouldn't have lived in 16 states in this country. I wouldn't have gone through hospital stays. I wouldn't have gone through homeless shelters. I had 8 homeless shelter stays. I had 7 inpatient stays. I wouldn't have those experiences. I wouldn't be able to understand or relate with other people if I didn't go through what it is that I went through. And now, right, I utilize that as my treasure chest, really, my treasure chest to be able to help others out of the abyss of what it is that they go through. That really is what it is that you just said about you and about how you have now gone in areas, and I know that you've traveled in ways that you probably wouldn't have traveled otherwise in a general life. You've met people, you've met different companies, you've worked with different companies that you probably wouldn't have worked with if you didn't have the challenges that you've gone through. You certainly have grown strength through what it is that you've gone through, right? I mean, it's almost like you were talking about it being a springboard really for you. I know that you have your blog, which is Being Me in My Own Skin. When did you wanted to be an advocate for those who are dealing with psoriasis just like yourself?
So that kind of came all by accident. None of this stuff was planned. And so I started searching online for more support. I'm like, there has to be a support group somewhere for psoriasis. And so I found a support group for psoriasis, and I just was overwhelmed with maybe not meeting people in person for the first time, but meeting people virtually that understood what it was that I was going through. And so I ended up writing a blog on the support group entitled My Suicide Letter. And so the letter outlined everything that I went through with psoriasis and all of the fears, the shame, the embarrassment. I revealed the inner thoughts, which we can be our biggest enemies a lot of times.
Testify.
Yeah. And at that moment, I had declared in that letter that I would commit murder to those parts of myself. I would kill the shame. I would kill the embarrassment. I would kill the part of me that felt as though I wasn't good enough because of my disease so that I could truly live. And so a lot of people could relate to that. And someone sent it to the National Psoriasis Foundation. And they were just so in awe of what I had expressed that they invited me to the volunteer conference. This was back in 2011.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, Shane, it's been history ever since. If someone would have told me that I would be doing today what it is I'm doing, I would have said that they were lying. But the National Psoriasis Foundation had a workshop during that time about telling your story through blogging and online. And so at that time, I was like, oh, well, I can do that because I'm not in front of anyone. Like, I can just write what I need to write, close the computer, and not know who's reading it or what they're thinking, you know?
Right.
And so it honestly just grew from that. And that's how my blog started. So I'm so grateful for the platform and just being able to tell my story the way that I need to tell it without it being filtered.
You know, you had mentioned the fact that we can be our own worst enemy. And, you know, on weekday mornings, I do a show called Motivated Strength. You know, it's all about bringing people to a higher level of thinking. That higher level of thinking will lead them to a higher level of living. That's what I find a lot when it comes to people dealing with challenges and struggles. And once they get to that point is to where they realize that they are more than the challenges that they face, they realize the purpose that they end up with or that they decide to take on is something that is above and beyond where it is that they otherwise would be. And so you start having that higher level of thinking. You start looking at things a little bit differently, and you start realizing that our mindset can really be our worst enemy, or it could be our most empowering friend. It can lead us to where it is that we actually want to be as opposed to where we merely exist to be. You know, when you were mentioning that, that's what I just kind of smiled, and I'm like, man, oh man, I'm like, you could be my publicist. I mean, for what it is that I try to go out there with and try to get people to see. You're a prime example of everything that we do here. You're a prime example of what Arisen Strength is all about. You're a prime example of what the Speaking the Heart Network is all about. The Speaking the Heart Network, of which Arisen Strength has been on since the very beginning. It's actually the engine of the Speaking the Heart Network, and that is to restore purpose and passion to those who need it most. Whether it be chronic pain, chronic illness, or mental illness, or maybe life experiences that you had that you can't let go because it doesn't seem fair or you feel stuck. Restoring purpose and passion is so very important because it leads us to where it is that we're meant to be as opposed to who we're merely existing to be. Why don't we go ahead and take a little quick break, folks? We are talking to Alisha Bridges of Being Me in My Own Skin, and she does so much more. And we're going to find out some of the things that she has planned in the near future, and so that you can find out how to follow her and how to be empowered by her and her example. We're going to be right back. And we are back here on the Arisen Strength Motivational Podcast. I am sitting here with my good friend. Her name is Alisha Bridges of Being Me in My Own Skin, but she is so much more than everything that we've talked about. I promise you there's even more to talk about. And that's what we do here is this is now the inspiration part, right? We've brought across the awareness part. Now we're going to be talking about the inspiration and motivation. And there's a whole lot of that surrounds Alisha Bridges. No matter what it is that she's been through, she has been a glowing example of what can be done as opposed to what can't be done. So let's talk about some things that you got planned in the near future. What do you got going on?
So in the month of August, I will be traveling to Pennsylvania for Camp Discovery. And Camp Discovery is a camp designed for kids living with different skin diseases. And so I'll be a camp counselor there. This is my third year doing it, and I believe that I get more excited about camp than the kids do. I don't know if I'm like making up for my childhood or something, but I'm like so excited. I feel like I've had my bags packed for a month, so I can't wait to get there and see my babies. It is a wonderful experience, and the kids there are dealing with all types of skin conditions, even outside of psoriasis, skin conditions that, you know, a person who isn't even in the medical field probably would have never heard of before. And I'm a part of a lot of different research initiatives. The most recent one is clinical phototherapy versus at-home phototherapy. And so I'm working with a dermatologist, Dr. Gelfand at UPenn. We're trying to see which type of phototherapy works best for people living with psoriasis and trying to make sure that the African-American voice is heard, because a lot of times in research, we are overlooked, or there's a thing where we have a distrust for the medical field. So it's really hard to get African-Americans involved in research and clinical trials. So I'm trying my best to bring that to the table.
Now, before you get going, you mentioned phototherapy beforehand. What is phototherapy? How's that all work?
So basically, phototherapy in our case is UVA or UVB light, and it is said to help slow down the skin cell growth. Okay. And it's not the same as a tanning booth. They actually don't suggest a tanning booth because the light bulbs are different and your chances for cancer will increase using that type of light. And then natural sunlight is also suggested. So it's something with how it regulates the vitamin D in the body. And when it regulates the vitamin D, it slows down that cell growth in helping to eliminate the psoriasis virtually.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you're bringing awareness to the African American community to kind of step outside of what it is that they are going through and kind of get them to step into their solution as opposed to standing on the outside. Is that what you're basically?
Well, not only that, but I feel like as a woman of color, our voices aren't heard in these type of atmospheres, especially when it comes to research and clinical trials. I'm a part of a research group called IDIOM, which is the International Dermatology of Outcome Measures. And so I've been with them for the last 4 years, and we're basically trying to come up with a clinical survey or a measure that will be used in all clinical trials that are consistent. Because right now there's like hundreds of different surveys that doctors can use. And because of that, we can't get consistent data. And so I'm able to look at a lot of the current research for dermatology. And when you look at the demographics, people of color are underserved. They're not a part of these clinical trials. They're not a part of research. And that really has a negative impact on effective treatments that are given to us. Not only effective treatments, but even with the assessment of diseases. If you look in a textbook and you look up the term psoriasis, it will say that it's characterized by red, inflamed patches of dry skin. Well, for me as a woman of color, my psoriasis has never been red.
It's brown.
So what ends up happening is you have someone Black who goes in and they may have psoriasis and they get this assessment. And it is said that they have something else because when that physician looks in that book for the definition, primary physician, it says red, not purple, not deep brown.
Right.
Then these people are being misdiagnosed. So my hope is to bring African American voice into research, clinical trials, so that we are assessed, that our concerns are heard and met, and so that we receive the proper diagnosis as well as the proper treatment.
Now, let me ask you a question, especially as a mental health advocate and dealing with depression. I know the African American community has an issue with admitting about mental health or admitting that their child or what have you is dealing with a mental health issue, right? It turns into whether it be a spirituality thing, whether it be a pride thing, right? And so that is just, the culture, right? That's the culture that people have grown into and have lived through for many, many years. Is that also fit with what it is that we're talking about here or not so much?
Well, I definitely can agree with the stigma with mental health when it comes to African Americans. And even for myself, I did not realize until I was in my 20s that the things that I dealt with was anxiety. Like when I was a teenager, I 100% dealt with anxiety. I remember going to look for a prom dress and becoming irritable because I was so overwhelmed because of my psoriasis. My palms started sweating. My heart started beating fast. I literally was in the dressing room having a panic attack, except I had no name to put to it. And those around me weren't aware of anxiety or panic attacks or depression and what that meant. So I was just labeled as being this little girl with a nasty attitude. And even with the psoriasis, a lot of times people will automatically assume, that child has eczema, right? Because that's the most common thing. And if something crazy is going on with your skin, I've never heard of the term psoriasis before. So if I've never heard of that term before, that's not even something that I can pull out my brain. But I've heard of eczema, so I'm going to say that you have eczema.
Gotcha.
I'm not going to take you to the doctor, And because of the lack of education of how diseases affect African Americans in a unique way, sometimes a parent will take their child to the doctor. They take them to a primary care physician, which isn't well versed in dermatology. And they'll say, you have eczema, when it's psoriasis or when it's literally one of the 100 other diseases of the skin, So if the parents aren't doing their due diligence and the primary care physician isn't doing his or her due diligence, then you leave a child that is receiving treatments that don't work and it prolongs them getting to an effective treatment.
Sure. Yeah. I want to give out a shout to my good friend Imade. She is the founder of Depressed While Black, and that's why it is that I knew that little tidbit when it came to mental health, because she brought that to my attention. And I got to tell you, I was a little bit ignorant to that. And, so I certainly, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person and tremendous spirit. And I always will give her a shout out when I get the opportunity, as I do with Alisha Bridges for sure. So, okay. So now here's one thing, folks. I got to tell you, when we were at Healthy Voices, we had the opportunity in order to be able to do a talent show. And so part of that talent show happened to deal with a lot of different things that people who are going through a number of different challenges and everything, but they kind of rose above what it is that they are ailed by. And Miss Bridges went up on stage and slayed the audience with her routine. What's your routine there?
Thank you. Thank you. I did not know how the crowd was going to perceive it. I was so nervous, but I'm so glad that I got a chance to do it, and I made people laugh, and some people even said it was one of their favorite parts. So I was just honored to be able to show a different side of me and to take something that made me cry for so long and to laugh about it myself and to actually help other people to see the lighter side of it. So that was a really dope, unique opportunity.
Yeah, for those who might not understand what we're talking about, Alisha went on stage and she did stand-up comedy. And she was hilarious. I mean, here's the thing. Alisha is bigger than life. I got to tell you, she really is. And I'm not talking about her frame size. I'm just talking about like the aura around her. I'm talking about her infectious laugh. I'm talking about, her voice. And when she sits there and she like belts out like, ah, it's like, man, it's like, you are on notice that you are in her world. And so that was so very cool. Is that something that you like doing?
Yeah, so it's a new hobby that I've picked up. And so I've performed a couple of times. I just performed the other night, actually. So I think it's something that I'm going to continue to do. I really enjoy it. I think I'm pretty decent at it, and I'm hoping to get better as time goes on. So you might be seeing more of me or hearing more of my jokes.
Well, let me tell you, I can't wait in order to be able to hear more, because I like I said, there's the sky is the limit. I do not see a limit to what it is that Alisha can do, as whether it be a performer, whether it be as an advocate, or whether it be as a person. I mean, I only had the opportunity in order to be able to meet her recently, but I got to tell you, it left me with an impression. It left me with an impression of a person that is somebody who is special and unique in who it is that she is, despite what it is that she's hailed by. I really don't care about her challenges and struggles, really. I don't even look at them that way. I look at Alisha being a person, and that's really what Arisen Strength was kind of brought to. We are here to help the person while the professionals help the patient. So with that being the case, I look at people who deal with their challenges and struggles. I look at them as people. I look at them as what it is their talent is, as what makes them laugh, what makes them, smile, what makes them special, what makes them unique. That is really easy to see when it comes to Alisha. I am so, so happy that you were here with us this evening. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring across?
Well, I definitely want to leave this with the listeners. This is something that I like to refer back to as I'm trying to inspire and to encourage people. So I'm going to say a couple of names.
Okay.
Sharon Everett. 60% of her body was burned after a fire in her back seat occurred due to pool chemicals and shopping bags behind the driver's seat that had leaked into other products she was bringing home. And she now works as a counselor for burn victims. Carrie Leitner, her 13-year-old daughter, was killed in a hit and run by a drunk driver. After this, Kari started the organization Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which we know as MAD.
Yep.
Alan Butchman, his 19-year-old daughter died from an eating disorder and drug addiction. In honor of his daughter, he founded the Culture Project to support women artists who focuses on social issues like women's rights. And then Alisha Bridges. I lived with an autoimmune disease for over 20 years in shame, and now I'm a health activist who advocates on behalf of millions to erase the stigma and shame of living with a chronic illness. My point in saying that is, whatever it is that's hurting you, whatever your biggest fears are, whatever has disappointed you the most, a lot of times that is where you'll find your purpose and passion and the ability to help others. Everybody I just named went through some detrimental stuff that literally could have killed them, could have ruined them, probably sent them in a state of depression, but they were able to pick themselves up with the help of others around them or therapy or whatever it is, the methods that they use. And they use those situations to inspire and to help other people. And so I just want to leave that with the people who are listening tonight. No matter what you're dealing with, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's another chronic illness, use that to help other people. Use that to help and encourage and to motivate yourself. You're not going through it in vain. It's not going to kill you. You can rise above it. And so that's what I live and strive to do with my psoriasis, with my mental health challenges, my emotional challenges, and everything that is thrown at me that purpose is used to get me down. I use those things in order to pick myself back up and to motivate others. So I hope you all are inspired.
I can't say it any better than that, folks. That is Alisha Bridges of Being Me in My Own Skin. She's a good friend of mine. She's a good friend of the Speaking the Heart Network. And I probably am going to have to say that we are going to be seeing Alisha with us again real soon. Alisha, it was wonderful to have you here with us. And I certainly do enjoy being a friend of yours. I certainly love the fact I am around to see what it is that you can do. And like I said, the sky is the limit.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be on your show.